Check, 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 check.
Jay stay paid, Pete rock the chocolate boy wonder. Peace and love, we out.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello. Thank you for tuning in today. I want to take a moment and apologize for the shit show that was yesterday. Yesterday there was like a really intense echo throughout the entire show, and I couldn't tell until we wrapped everything up. And I'm really sorry to you guys because I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this and to tune in. So I'm really sorry about that echo, and like I always say, I promise that every time is going to be a little better. In fact, I'm going to adjust this camera angle for one quick second. Yeah, that feels better. How you guys doing? Nice to see you all today. Thanks for tuning in again. What we're going to be doing today is I thought it would be a good idea to focus on our sachets. Our sachets are like the thing that's interesting about sachets is that it's all about convenience. You know what I mean? Sachets is just like if you want to have better tea than you're currently used to, but you just want to throw it in a cup, and you don't want to worry about tea bags or you don't want to worry about teapots and scales and so forth, then sachets are a very attractive option. But you know, and at the same time, we like the quality of the tea. As long as you're drinking tea in a tea bag or in a sachet, the kind of like the ceiling of the quality that's available to you is dictated by the tea company. It's dictated by what can fit inside that sachet and what's going to go inside that tea bag, right? That's really going to dictate the quality of tea that's available to you. When you start messing with loose leaf tea, on the other hand, then it's really up to you. I want to make sure that the chat is available to us here, by the way. The echo is here. Jesus Christ, are you serious? I have no idea how to fix that. Fucking A. Let's see. I'm gonna pause this stream and I'm gonna try and figure this out. I apologize, guys, and I'll be back momentarily. Cheers. Check, check, check. Is this any good? Can you hear me? Is the echo still there and terrible? Let's see. Check, check. The echo is gone. Thank God. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mike Ortiz with Jojo T. Jesus Christ, that was a pain in the butt. Thank you for staying with us. All right, so the audio finally works. I have no idea what I'm doing, but one step at a time, we'll get somewhere. Jesus. Wow. A tremendous exercise in frustration has just happened. How you all doing today? Thank you so much for tuning in. All right. So what I wanted to focus on today was our sachets, right? Our sachets are kind of like a very simple way to have tea. It's based all around convenience. You just put them in a cup and go. And we'll talk about that in a second. But before I do, ladies and gentlemen, streaming is crazy hard. Trying to figure out, like, because, okay, I want to be able to show you guys, like, check this out. This is what I was working on for today so that we can have this. You ready? We go like this, and then we can show you our teas with a nice overhead shot, right? Even there, right? Now, when I go back over here, that's the overhead shot, and then that's the front-facing shot. So you see this whole mess that you see right here? That's just to get this angle. One day in the future, there will be something up here maybe that can zoom down. And that's another thing that we're working on. So whatever, one step at a time. I promise it'll get better. I see the chat is going crazy. It's just 6 cups. Yeah, that's right. I have the teas over here, and I'm gonna go through them one at a time. So, as a general introduction, what are sachets? Sachets are just tea packed into some sort of material that, if you put the whole bag in water, it'll hold the tea, and it'll allow for the tea to brew into the water. The word sachet is commonly used to describe a sachet of herbs, where you'll put the herbs in a little pouch, and the pouch is like breathable. So you'll put the herbs in there, and then you'll let that boil in a broth. That's a very common use for a sachet, right? Now, as time has passed, we've developed different technologies for sachets. So the sachet that we use is a soy-based biodegradable sachet. A lot of sachets that are made out of nylon are releasing microplastics, which is obviously not ideal. But we use a soy-based one that does not release microplastics. And what I really like about it is that it can show it shows the integrity of the leaf. It shows, like, you can tell if there's whole leaves or if there's broken leaves, and so forth. And I think that that's really educational and useful to people that, especially like people that have only ever seen like chopped up tea in a paper bag, to see a nice little sachet that they can see through and they can actually see the leaves tends to be an educational experience by itself. And then furthermore, especially in restaurants, I find that most restaurants really are absolutely not interested in brewing loose leaf tea. They're really intimidated by it. They don't want to have to buy teaware. They don't want to have to train the staff. They don't want to add extra steps that are going to get in between that server executing the order of tea and moving on to the next thing, which are all like really valid concerns in the restaurant industry. It makes all the sense in the world that they're not going to want to focus on like loose leaf exquisite teas. They're going to want to focus on efficiency, So in the interest of that, our sachets are all sealed, and I'll grab them to show you. This is my bag of sachets. Here. Our jasmine pearl. peach oolong. Our English breakfast. Our chamomile. Okay. And then we need our peppermint. Our peppermint's right here. A little sample. And the last one is our Earl Grey. Here we go. Put it right. So these are what we call the classics. Here, it looks like there's a couple new entrances in the entrance in the chat. Hey, go Jojo T. What's up, Yelena? Thanks for tuning in. Cheers. So this, because of the fact that sachets are like pre-packed, something that I think is important about sachets is that we have the classics, you know, because here, I want to do this. There we go. Is that like too much shit on the table? Anyway, that's decoration. So if you're like in a restaurant kind of situation, I don't think it makes sense to have like, you know, a really big tea menu unless you're trying specifically to give your clients that kind of experience, right? But for most restaurants, tea is an afterthought, you know, and that makes sense. However, at the end of the day, when a tea lover comes to your restaurant and sits down and orders a cup of tea, it would be a shame if it's like the thing that they get is disappointing, you know, or if they come in and they just want a cup of black tea, but then the restaurant only has a cherry mango guava black tea, you know, something like that can be a little disappointing, right? So our intention with the sachet line is to kind of define the classic tea menu as it has come to be in, you know, in modern America. And the classic tea menu is, as we call it, our green jasmine pearls, English breakfast, and Earl Grey. English breakfast is just a blend of black teas that's meant to be kind of jammy and thick and stand up to milk and sugar. And then Earl Grey is also kind of a thick black tea that's been lightly scented with oil of bergamot. So as far as true tea, it's green jasmine pearl, and we like English breakfast and Earl Grey to be the classics. And then chamomile and peppermint as the herbal options. We like to add peach oolong to this list of classics because oolong tea and lightly oxidized oolong tea is something that not a lot of people are familiar with, right? And it's kind of an alien flavor profile. So we just think that it's a good idea to use the familiar kind of comforting sweetness of peach to bridge the gap between like a flavor profile that people are really unfamiliar with and something that they're really comfortable with. It's a Taiwanese oolong, and Taiwanese oolongs naturally have a lot of peach notes, so it just kind of makes sense. So I'm gonna go one tea at a time and get them prepped for us. And I'm gonna start us off with jasmine pearls. So jasmine pearls that's been our best-selling tea since 2011, since we launched, and you can see why. It's very pretty. Each of the little balls that you see there is the bud and the first two leaves. They've been plucked and then pan-fired and then rolled into this shape. This happens in March, and then the tea is sent over to East China, where jasmine flowers are harvested, and the tea is blended with a fresh harvest of jasmine. It's allowed to sit for 24 hours, and then all of the jasmine flowers are removed and fresh flowers are added. Actually, Monica, one of our friends on Facebook, she's like, she asked us to do a whole episode just about jasmine pearls. She loves jasmine pearls. And a lot of our clients do. It's like literally it would be impossible to have JoJo tea without jasmine pearls. People really like them. One really important thing to note about jasmine pearls here, let me switch over to the overhead shot. Okay. So something that's really important to note about green tea in general, right? Whenever you're brewing any category of tea other than green tea or white tea, you want to hit the tea directly with your hot water. But green tea will burn very easily if you do that. So I recommend that you take your hot water and first you fill up your cup. And then you introduce the sachet. Now, you'll notice as the leaves sit, it starts to open up. Remember that each of these is hand tied into a pearl. Let me do a quick. You'll notice that each of these is hand tied into a pearl. And as the tea brews, the pearls individually open up. You see how they were like tied up in those balls before? In fact, what we can even do is to give you more of a sense of what I'm talking about. We'll take one of our sachets and just rip it open. And here, you can see how they're tied up in these little pearl shapes, right? The white being the bud and the green being the leaves. You can see how these pearls are all kind of white and green. So that's the difference in color. It's just what part of that is the bud and what part of that is the leaf. And already you can see how much the leaf has opened up, how different it looks than those dry leaves. And something that happens often, especially with sachets, people ask us like, oh, how long should we let the tea steep for? And what I like to recommend is just let the leaves be your guide. Yeah, let's get the camera back. So as you see the leaves open up, that's as good an indication of any of whether or not the tea is ready. You know what I mean? As the tea brews, it'll kind of unfurl and open itself up, and that's as good a guide as any as to whether or not that tea is ready. Now, this tea should be just about brewed. See, this is what that tea should look like. That color should be this kind of pale jade. But if we look at the inside of the tea bag or the sachet, you'll be able to see the actual pluck. There we go. So here, for example, that's the bud right here, this part. Oh, actually, it looks like this was a bud that broke off. That little guy right there. And then this is a first leaf. You can see it even, like if I open it up, it looks like there's a bud in there. So there's a bud. And the first leaf and the second leaf. And that's what the standard pluck looks a lot like for most teas. It's the bud and the first two leaves. So after you brew our jasmine pearls, you can see the buds and the leaves there. Then let's switch this back. So because of that traditional method of infusion of the jasmine flower, you tend to get a really nice kind of finish of jasmine on the breath, which I think is kind of why it's done so well for us. Because when it's obviously really hot in Miami, and when you drink a really hot tea and it's really hot outside, if it leaves this refreshing aroma of jasmine on the breath, that tends to be really nice. Let's take a look at it. So something that always kind of surprises me about this tea is because I usually wouldn't use water as hot as I used to brew a green tea. Usually I'd want to use water a little cooler. But the cultivar of the tea bush that we use to make this, we need smell-o-vision. I wish we had smell-o-vision. We're getting a chat from Elisa Tillet at Twitch. It was something that I'm realizing is that, like, if people are watching on Facebook, they don't see the Twitch chat, and if people are watching on Twitch, they don't see the Facebook chat. So we're getting a note from Twitch that we need smell-o-vision, and I agree. We'll work on that. So we use the cultivar, the Big Bud cultivar, which is the cultivar that's used to make white tea. A lot of green teas, obviously can get quite bitter because the tea leaf has a lot of tannins. But because the bud is so big, just for your breath. Yes, just for my breath, please. So because the bud is so big, it tends to kind of take a lot of the bitterness out of the tea and give it a little bit more kind of butteriness and sweetness. And that's something that people tend to really enjoy about the green jasmine pearl. The last note I want to make about the green jasmine pearl is that because it's a green tea, it'll have about a 2-hour time release on the caffeine. When you first drink this tea, it'll be about 2 hours before the caffeine is fully released into your bloodstream. So just something to keep in mind. If you really like this tea, that's great, but you might want to pick a different tea for after dinner, for example. Because this one might keep you up a little longer than you want it. All right, I think that's it for green jasmine pearls, huh? I don't think we have any questions coming through the chat about this in particular, so I'm gonna jump over to peach oolong next. Magic of the camera. All right. So now we have a peach oolong. So peach oolong is it's the only flavored tea that we offer in the JoJo Tea catalog. And it's a Taiwanese jade oolong. And just a really quick kind of definition of oolong tea is that it's partially oxidized. And what does that mean? If you take fresh tea leaves and you roll them and bruise them, that'll cause them to start oxidizing. They start turning brown, right? The longer you let them sit, the more oxidized they get. If they oxidize fully, that becomes a black tea. If they don't oxidize at all and you cook them and dry them as quickly as possible, that becomes a green tea. So if green tea has 0% oxidation and black tea has 100% oxidation, oolong tea is anything in between. And it's like an ongoing part of the tea professional's job to find a way to communicate that in as few words as possible. So it's always a challenge. Now, Taiwanese jade oolong usually has some really nice kind of peach and gardenia and carnation notes and apricot. These kind of like sticky, fleshy orange fruits and kind of fresh, soft floral notes, you know? And then it's a lightly oxidized tea. You'll be able to see by the color here. Let's show you the leaves real quick. There we go. This is I want to get a little kind of down and dirty with it. So here's what the sachet looks like before we brew it. It's got that classic kind of really tightly rolled Taiwanese oolong shape. And then you can see there's little chunks of dehydrated Japanese white peach. And there's little marigold petals. And there's a little bit of peach flavoring in there as well. So you get a nice kind of peach finish on the breath. Now, oolong tea is not sensitive like green tea or white tea. So if we hit it directly with our hot water, that'll be fine. In fact, that'll even give us the most thorough extraction of flavor possible. Something that might make sense if you want to make sure that you get the most flavorful and the most aromatic brew possible. Something that might make sense is to put a lid on your cup as it brews so that the steam is kind of circulating and guaranteeing you as thorough a brew as possible. All right. And now we're just going to let this steep for a second. This is a tea that I have like a difficult relationship with because, you know, I'm like a purist with tea, and I don't want for JoJo Tea to sell flavored teas. You know, it's like flavored teas are like an insult because there's 6,000 years of history behind tea. You know, why do we have to add mango to that? Like it's already delicious for us, you know? And there's been trillions of hours to make it taste like this. So why do we have to add stuff? But then at the same time, like I understand why it's done because I'm somebody who believes in tea a lot. I'm somebody that believes that tea is good for people and it gives us a moment of peace and it helps us connect with ourselves and each other and with history. But then the flavor profile of a lot of these teas is something that people aren't familiar with. And not just the flavor profile, but like the texture and the finish. You know, when you first drink a sip of tea, it tastes like something, but then with every breath that you pass after, the flavor kind of changes and molds and moves, you know? And I think that that's really unique to tea, you know? Wine has that quality too, but I think that people are more familiar with wine already in the U.S., and they know what to expect out of a wine, but they don't really know what to expect out of a tea, especially with a exotic name like oolong. You know, it's like, what does that mean? A lot of people have never heard of that. So I just think that having a really familiar flavor profile in there, like peach, it makes people, if they see peach oolong, it's like, oh, well, peach is something that I'm really familiar with. Oolong is something exotic that maybe they've heard of, but most people don't know what it means, right? So this is kind of like something that we consider to be a sort of introductory tea, right? Something to just kind of give you a peek of what oolong tea can be. But in Miami's restaurant scene, it's just like people love this tea. You know, they like can't get enough of it. It flies. You know, we like can't. Yeah, I was gonna say we can't keep it on hand, but that's not true. We can. But the point is that it really does move quickly. So it's a tea that, although I don't want to carry flavored teas, I'm really happy that we took the chance on this one and that we came to know it and that we're offering it because people tend to really like it. Here, let's take a quick look at the wet leaf now. Ooh, it's hot. here you can already see how much bigger the leaf is here than in the green jasmine pearl. This is all just one leaf, you know? Look at that. And as you can see, the leaf is still quite wrinkled. That means that there's still a lot of oil and juice in there, and we can keep on brewing that tea. You see some stems even, right? For most categories of tea, you wouldn't see stems in there, but Taiwanese jade oolongs in particular, the plucking standard is like they do like the bud and like the first 4 leaves. So here, let's switch this up. So because they have such a big plucking standard of like the bud and the first like 4 leaves, and then on top of that, once the leaf is plucked, it's really beat up. You know, the leaf is rolled and bruised and rolled and bruised. It's like rolled up tight into a really big ball and then fluffed up and allowed to breathe. And that process is repeated over and over. They fluff the tea up, they roll the tea up into a really tight ball, then they fluff it. And then they traditionally would repeat this process 35 times by hand. And today it's done about 10 times by machines that kind of compress the tea. It's still crazy labor intensive because there's still like people that got to roll up the tea and gather it all together and then put it in the machine and then take it out and so forth. But it's not like 35 rounds of hand rolling like it used to be. At any rate, like because the tea leaves go through such an intense beating during the processing of jade oolong, that's the main reason why the stem is kept in there, because the stem actually kind of holds the tea together and it holds each pluck together. And whenever you're brewing tea, it's like you want to keep as much integrity as possible. So what that means is like this, right? If we pluck the bud and the first 2 leaves as a single pluck, then when we make our cup of tea, it should be made, theoretically, exclusively out of pluckings that are the bud and the first 2 leaves. The more uniform the particulate is, the better brew you're going to get, because everything is going to be brewing at the same pace. Whereas if you have a bunch of like small broken leaves, and then you have some medium leaves, and you have some whole leaves, the small broken leaves will kind of give out everything they have really quickly. But whereas the bigger leaf will take a bunch of time, it'll give out some flavors at first, and then it'll continue to kind of change and shift, and it'll express itself as the brew continues, So that's a big part of the reason why it's so important and why we want to keep the pluckings together, and we want to like honor the integrity of the pluck. See, like, I'm proud of this one because most stuff with peach flavoring, I feel like it just tastes like cough syrup. And I really do get a really nice kind of a blossom of fresh peach on the attack of this tea. On the attack, I mean like the initial flavors that hit the palate. But then on the finish, you do get some of those really nice kind of soft floral notes toward like gardenias and carnations that do sit on the breath in a really nice way, similarly to the green jasmine pearl. So I think that's another part of the reason that tea is attractive in our market in Miami, is just because it leaves this really nice floral, fruity bouquet on the aroma that's really enjoyable. I think that's all I got for peach oolong. I really like the way peach oolong sounds because it makes me say the sound pichula. And I think pichula is a funny sounding sound. All right. Now, I'm going to take a moment, by the way, and apologize again. Last night's show was a mess, and I'm sorry. That was so bad. It's like it's strange because every day I tell myself that I'm going to get to the office earlier, and I'm going to get stuff ready for the stream earlier. And then every day at 5:45, I'm like pulling out my hair, losing my mind. So I promise it will get better. I promise it will get better every time. I think, whatever. I think, Elise, I'm going to give you a shout afterwards. We'll talk about it. I think that there's I was having a problem with the video and the audio interface. It's boring, but it's important. All right. So next we're gonna do English breakfast tea. English breakfast, like it's pretty tricky actually. The whole English breakfast phenomenon, and I'll show you what I mean by that. First, let me show you the dry leaf. So, English breakfast is a black tea, which means that it's fully oxidized. The leaves are plucked, rolled, and bruised. Then they're allowed to fully oxidize, and then they're baked. You can see it's pretty small leaves. It's not like a old tree material or anything like that. And what English breakfast is supposed to mean is that it's a blend of black teas that's formulated specifically to take milk and sugar. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have it with milk and sugar. It just means that the tea is kind of thick and malty enough that it can actually stand up to milk and sugar. There's going to be something new every day you learn about. I believe that. From my sister mentor family Elise on Twitch is giving me a heads up about the frustrations. Let's see. Yeah, there's going to be something new every day you learn about. It seems like it, you know. I think that which is exciting, but it can also drive me a little bit crazy, but whatever. That's important. It's important to be driven crazy. Otherwise, you just do the same shit over and over again. So, English breakfast tea, you'll find a lot of different definitions for English breakfast tea, and in at the end of the day, what I think English breakfast tea really means is a blend of black teas that's formulated specifically to take milk and sugar. Furthermore, though, it actually has like a political history, and the whole English tea culture has a really intense political history because it was it was built off a colonial system, you know. So the workers' rights in colonial systems aren't exactly real, right? Now, although that's the case, the goal from the beginning of British tea production was to create enough tea in their colonies, mainly India, Sri Lanka, and Kenya, and other parts of North Africa, to create enough tea to satisfy the entire British Empire. And the British, when they were first introduced to tea, they drank a lot of it, you know. They because they saw that let me switch over to this one. They noticed that the people that were drinking tea weren't getting stuff like the plague, and they weren't getting these horrible sicknesses. Later, it turned out that the reason that they weren't getting those sicknesses is because they were boiling their water, and it actually didn't have anything to do with tea. However, they ended up going to war. You know, they smuggled a bunch of opium into this little fishing village, and they got the people pretty hooked on opium there, and then they invaded the fishing village and took it over, and that became Hong Kong. Shortly after that, they kind of they sent this one famous guy. His name's Robert Fortune, and he traveled through China on this legendary trip to pick up the ins and outs of tea brewing. Then he took that back to India, and they took the fields where they were growing poppy to make opium, and they turned them into tea fields, and they did the same thing in Sri Lanka and Kenya. Now, from the beginning, like I said, this tea production was based on volume, so there's not a lot of nuance and dynamics and subtlety. It's just like big, thick malt, you know, rich, jammy teas that you can have with milk and sugar, and it'll be a satisfying flavor profile. That's kind of like the goal, for lack of a better word, in the processing of a lot of those kind of classic English black teas. Another note that I think is important is you can see the color of the teacup here, and it's like a red, you know, whereas the tea leaves themselves were that dark black color. So what we call black tea in America and in Europe, they actually call red tea in China. And other darker categories like ripe pu'er and like liu bao, they call hei cha, which means dark tea or black tea. So, and those teas actually look black like coffee, real black tea. Now, let's take a look at the notes. You always get a kind of like, or I always get from our English breakfast, like a malt, smoke, and tamarind. The black teas from Sri Lanka tend to be kind of higher elevation. Excuse me. Sorry about that. They tend to be kind of higher elevation, and that gives us a little bit of kind of that thick, jammy sweetness. And then that coupled together with Assam's like very bassy malt, and Kenya's smokiness and dryness, I think together make a really nice cup. Yeah, like a rich kind of citrus, tropical, jammy flavor profile up front. And then a very nice, easy kind of relaxation of the initial intensity with a little bit of that thick kind of jammy tropical fruitness on the back of it. English breakfast is plain black tea. So while Earl Grey is black tea with oil of bergamot, and chai is black tea with cinnamon and ginger and cardamom and vanilla and so forth, English breakfast is, if you're ever looking for just a classic plain black tea, know that English breakfast means classic plain black tea. And then lastly, because it's pure black tea, the caffeine is released much more quickly. By 25 minutes after you've drank the tea, the caffeine is already fully released in the bloodstream, which is a little bit more of a boost than, of an immediate boost, I should say, than green tea. All right. Next, we're gonna jump into Earl Grey. So, for our Earl Grey, we're using only long leaf black tea from Assam, India. Let's take a look at it here. And there we can see long leaves. All of the leaves are a lot more uniform here because there's just one source out of Assam. The goal here is to have enough kind of thickness and richness that it has a large malt, but then at the same time enough kind of nuance and complexity for a little bit of fruit note. Basically, the more broken the tea leaf is, the more kind of just like heaviness and malt you'll get. And then the more full leaf it is, the more room for nuance and complexity exists. So we use a kind of thick, malty Assam black tea. And that is gently scented with oil of bergamot. Okay. Already automatically you can see that red color starting to seep out of the sachet. If we can look quite closely, you can see it almost like I want to make sure it doesn't fog up the camera. But can you see the kind of the dark oils and juices kind of seeping out of the leaf and creating small clouds? That's as tea brews, you always want to look at it, and it'll give you a sense of where it's going. You know, how quickly does the color bleed out into the leaf, or into the water rather? And you can see those clouds of color kind of seeping into the water. So Earl Grey and any black tea really, something that I think is important to say is that if you plan on having it with milk and sugar, then it makes sense to brew it really strong so you get a nice complete kind of extraction. But if you are not necessarily trying to have it with milk and sugar, then I think it benefits from a lighter brew. You'll get a little bit more mellow of a flavor profile. We got somebody checking in from Twitch. Carote Carte. What's up, Carote Carte? Hello, my friend. Thanks for tuning in. Cheers. We're talking about Earl Grey tea in sachets, and I've just been brewing it. We're gonna do a tasting in a minute. And yeah, again, something that's really important to communicate about sachets is because the more you get into tea, I think, for me anyway, the more I get into tea, the more I want to venture outside of the classics, and the more I want to look at the kind of like the more nuanced and the more specific teas that are kind of harder to come by and a little bit more rare. But again, the whole point of sachets is consistency and efficiency and easiness. So more than anything, I think in the food service establishment, if you're if you're working in a restaurant and your clients want to just have a quick cup of tea, then the sachets are really useful. But at the same time, if you just want a quick cup of tea and you're not trying to go into the most rare oolongs from the highest mountains, and you just want to have a good cup of tea and throw it in a cup and go, then our sachets are for you. So let's see what's up with this Earl Grey. That kind of bright citrus aroma from the oil of bergamot is always the first thing that I notice when I smell an Earl Grey tea. It has the most loud aromatic profile of any black tea because it's scented with an oil that's like super aromatic. It's like it's used in a lot of perfumes. Yeah, and what it does is pretty interesting. Because Assam tea is almost like, hello, I wish I could buy local loose leaf tea. Hey, Nancy Chansey. Well, where are you from? We're in Miami, and we're a tea house that's local to Miami. If you visit sipjojo.com, you can see any of our teas. And we're part of a dope little tea community here on Twitch as well, including Tealet Tea. And yeah, where's home for you, Nancy? I'll keep an eye out on your message. We have a chat on Twitch coming in. So something that's really interesting about this, I'm saying, is like tea has its Indiana. Oh, cool. So okay, I'm trying to help Nancy, and I want to explain this tea. I'm gonna finish explaining this tea, and then I'm gonna talk to Nancy. But it looks like Elise is helping her out, which is beautiful. Nancy, you're in good hands. So it's like this, right? Something that's kind of like the defining character, in my opinion, of classic Assam black tea. Assam black tea just means it's from a place in India called Assam that grows tea at sea level. And because the tea grows so quickly, it tends to be very malty, very thick. So, but I like to look at flavors like music, in the sense that there's low notes, and that's like the bass, the boom 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 boom, that kind of like repeating bass at the bottom of the melody, or the bottom of the rhythm, I guess I should say. But then like imagine flutes over that, whatever. Those are the high notes that kind of play off of the deep bass to give a lot of dynamics in the music. So that's kind of what oil of bergamot does to an otherwise very rich and malty black tea. The oil of bergamot gives that rich bass a high note that's kind of undeniable. So that as soon as you drink it, you get that kind of malty base, but then you also get that buzzy, high citrus. Kind of reminds me of flutes playing because it's so high and buzzy and vibrant. And that kind of completes the flavor profile of a classic English breakfast Earl Grey. Of a classic that kind of completes the flavor profile of a classic Earl Grey tea. Yeah, and it should always have like, at least ours. I'm really happy with it. It has this really nice kind of like dark honey finish, where up front you get that base and you get the high note of the citrus, and then they both kind of mellow out together and join forces to become a really nice, complete kind of a sugary honey quality. Okay, now moving along, we've just got two more that we're going to cover today. We'll start with our chamomile. Oh, actually, you know what? I'm gonna need to. I'm gonna need to make a quick run to grab some water for us. I also, yeah, I'm gonna make a quick run to grab some water, and then when I bring it back, I'm gonna make some programming notes. I'm gonna leave some music playing in the background while I do that, and you guys rock and roll. And we're back. Nancy, thanks a lot for joining us. Cheers. Thanks for taking some time. It looks like Elise hooked you up with some spots out in Bloomington in Indiana. That's exciting. Okay. So now we'll jump into our herbal sachets to finish up today's line. And we'll start with our chamomile. Our chamomile is magical. No, here, hold on one second. So, what we're looking at here is a sealed sachet of Egyptian chamomile, and after the flowers are plucked, they're really quickly heat treated. I think that Egyptian chamomile is like the most delicious chamomile that exists, very simply. It's just really kind of buttery, and it has some light sweetness to it. And I think that that's really easy to enjoy. The longer it steeps for, the more of a kind of tranquilizer it becomes. Because the active quality of chamomile is that it makes us kind of relaxed. It's almost like a tranquilizer, you know? So when you hit chamomile with boiling water, if you let it sit, the longer you let it sit for, the stronger of a tranquilizer it's going to become, right? So tranquilizer, sedative, what's the right, whatever, and something like that. It'll make you feel tired and buzzy and right, ready for bed. So this is a nice tea for people that have trouble sleeping. This is a nice tea for the end of the night to help you digest your food. If you're not looking for anything that's going to infuse your blood with energy, but you're looking for something that's just going to kind of make it easy to drift off into sleep, then chamomile is a really nice option. And we'll pour the boiling water directly onto the chamomile flowers to get a really nice kind of thorough extraction. I always love, like I don't really drink a lot of chamomile, to be honest with you guys. I love tea, and tea is not chamomile. Tea is tea, and chamomile is chamomile. It sounds like something from an Allen Ginsberg poem. But what I do really like about it is, here, let me switch to the overhead view so you can see what I'm talking about. So the sachet instantly just kind of blows up like a pillow as soon as it's hit with hot water. And I don't know, I think that there's something kind of innocent, beautiful, and comforting about this little pillow that's just stuffed with Egyptian chamomile flowers. That kind of mellow, cozy, comforting vibe that chamomile hints at is what I think of every time that sachet kind of puffs up like a little pillow and offers that complete, like instant expansion of those flowers. So now we'll taste. Here we go. It's always like butter, apple, and honey on the nose, you know. And then it's really soft. Like that's what I like about Egyptian chamomile, you know. There's like I can, as soon as I sip it, I can feel it moving through my entire system and kind of slowing things down. But beyond that, it tastes good. It doesn't taste like bitter. And that's kind of a trap with chamomile, especially like there's a lot of Eastern European chamomile on the market is really beautiful. You know, it's like every single flower is the exact same size, and it's like a really light, kind of vibrant yellow green, but it's kind of grassy and it tastes a little bitter, and it can really easily oversteep and then taste really bitter. Whereas the Egyptian ones, I don't know if it's a product of the heat treating, or I should say, I don't know if it's only a product of the heat treating, but every flower looks different. It's not as pretty as the Eastern European chamomile. You know, some bulbs are like this, some bulbs are like that, some bulbs are misshapen, some bulbs are perfectly round. It's like everyone is different. But their flavor profile is so much more agreeable. Like it's hard to imagine somebody tasting just plain loose leaf chamomile and having like an aggressive, oh my God. No, it's like really, really soft, agreeable flavors. And most importantly, again, like no caffeine, and in fact, quite the opposite. A really mellow kind of tranquilizing, sedative, help you get ready for bed kind of effect. And that's a little note about our chamomile. Now we have one last sachet for the day. I'm going to get that ready for us. And the last one is the crazy vibrant peppermint. Peppermint, I like to say it kind of wakes up your face in the sense that really good peppermint, ours is Pacific Northwest from Oregon, and really good peppermint kind of like when you drink it and it goes down your throat and then you exhale and that cooling peppery aroma kind of comes back up. It should like really wake up your entire kind of throat and face and chest, and it should open up your lungs. Of course, peppermint doesn't have any caffeine, so it's not going to be a kind of chemical stimulation, at least as far as caffeine goes, right? I think it's more of like because of the flavor profile and the perceived temperature. Like some stuff when you eat it, it makes your mouth feel warmer. Stuff like cinnamon. And then there's some stuff that when you have it, it makes your mouth feel cooler and more refreshed. And that's like spearmint tends to be a little bit more sweet and cooling, but peppermint is just like aggressively cooling, right? Kind of has a little bit of notes of like a dark chocolate and black pepper, but with a really pronounced cooling temperature effect. It's crazy aromatic. Like as soon as you open a bag of sachets of peppermint, you can smell it like in the whole room. And in my opinion, like, you know, the kind of rule of thumb tends to be that with any tea, you want to brew it for 5 minutes when you're doing a sachet in a cup. I strongly recommend against that. With peppermint in particular, just do a quick brew, like 2 minutes, you know, because the peppermint leaf is so loud that like as soon as you put it in water, it's going to start giving, you know. And let's see what's up. You get that kind of like bubblegum toothpaste, like aggressive mint quality. Bubblegum. Yeah, and it's got like, I'm actually like surprised by the sweetness. It does have a nice kind of dynamic sweetness up front. You know, you get a little bit of the sweetness and you get a little bit of the cooling effect, but after you sip it, the sweetness dissipates and that cooling kind of minty, refreshing character is really what sits on the breath. Like we said, there's no caffeine in peppermint. So it's really just kind of the hot water and the juice and the flavor of the leaf is what's combining to help you break down your food. It's more of a digestive tea and a breath freshener than anything else. And that's kind of a general introduction to our sachets. I just thought it would be a good idea to go over that in a piece-by-piece breakdown and go over the classics. And now that we're done, I want to make another kind of side point and make an announcement. We can put the music back on a little bit. So something that's really important for me to let you guys know, for the last time, I'm going to apologize for yesterday's debacle. The figuring out the echo of the audio was just driving me crazy. I think I figured it out. So hopefully tomorrow's show we'll be able to hit the ground running and get moving. But either way, I'm going to be out of town on Thursday and Friday. I don't think I'm going to be able to do a stream on Thursday or Friday of this week. So I'm sorry, guys. That being said, though, on Saturday, I'm going to be collaborating with Elise from Tealet, and we'll be over on her channel, and we'll be putting out some content. So please keep an eye out for that. And please follow and subscribe to Tealet Tea as well, so that we can all kind of stay on top of what we're up to, and so that we can move this American tea culture forward. Yeah, so I'll see you guys tomorrow night. And then I'll see you on Saturday out of San Francisco. We'll see if it's sunny. I don't know. Either way, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you guys for showing the love. Thank you guys for participating in the chat. And we'll see you tomorrow. Let's do this. Like that. And then let's do like this. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in to Mike Ortiz. on March 9th. The episode's topic today was what's up with teabags, and we're also sorry that yesterday's audio sucked. We promise that tomorrow's going to be great audio and great tea, and we're going to have a wonderful time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Mike Ortiz. Bye-bye now.